Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board meeting. I call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we'll start with correspondence. Brian?
Nothing this evening.
Okay. Commendations, good news. Lil?
Yeah, so things have started to slow down as we get closer to the holiday break. But Student Council just had their toy drive, and we made it kind of like a class competition. So we had bins in the office, and you could bring in new toys, and they would be donated. And that was actually pretty successful. And then FBLA had a clothing drive, and also Environmental Club did a kind of clothing drive thing where they set up tables in the lobby, and they had clothes out, and students could just take the clothes that they wanted. It's kind of like a reduce, reuse type of situation.
Oh, that's nice.
So that was really cool, and yeah.
Wow. Nice new ideas.
Yeah.
Very cool. Go ahead, Wendy.
I have a few things to report out tonight over at Bartlett. Their PTA ran the Penguin Patch gift shop at school during last week. That's an adorable store where students can buy and wrap gifts for their families at very low costs. Santa Claus also flew in from the North Pole last Tuesday for a PTA event where it was Cocoa with Santa. Students got to go visit the Penguin Patch shop, decorate cookies, and visit with each other and with Santa Claus. Dance Visions continued a long-standing tradition of performing at Bartlett today. It was heartwarming to see so many students engaged in the dance numbers and clapping along. This week is also Spirit Week at Bartlett, and there's a different theme for each day. And the whole school is looking forward to coming here to Goffstown High School for the holiday concert that they do just for Bartlett students this Friday. Over at Maple Ave, students are participating in a number of holiday-themed activities throughout this week, including Reindeer Day, Grinch Day, gingerbread house decorating, and more. Maple Avenue would also like to thank their parent group because they are sponsoring a staff breakfast this week. Over at Mountain View on December 6th, they held an internet safety presentation for families in the evening, followed up with a daytime presentation for our 7th and 8th graders. Deputy Matt Fleming and his incredible dog Nico came in for those presentations. The 7th grade students attended the Palace Theater last Friday for a performance of A Christmas Carol, and they celebrated their staff at Mountain View last Friday with a cocoa bar as well. There's also Spirit Week going on at Mountain View, and today was Band T-shirt Day. There was some very creative old school band T-shirts, including AC/DC and Def Leppard, that I saw on students and staff today, which was kind of fun.
That is fun.
And lastly, we did parent-teacher conferences not too long ago at Mountain View at our elementary schools, and we had an amazing turnout of parents, so a special thank you to so many families to come out and meet with teachers.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
And before we go any further, we have a teacher rep. I'd like to introduce Miss Bean. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and now you'll be here the rest of the school year.
Thank you.
So is there anything you would like to add for put you on the spot?
I will share that Wendy allowed us some funding to pull the middle school and the high school math teachers,
Nice.
and we're collaborating and communicating and trying to improve the curriculum in math from 5th through 12th grade,
Nice.
bringing more rigor, aligning more to the SAT. I'm impressed that the Mountain View Middle School teachers are on board with trying to get their kids better ready for the SAT along with us.
Yeah.
And with the new SAT, little bit of wrapping our brains around the change in questions
Yeah.
and doing that together. And
Awesome.
it's going well. And we had one of those meetings after school today.
Good.
We meet once a month.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Commendations, good news? Go ahead, Jim.
I would just like to report out on the two young ladies that are giving a synopsis of what's going on at Mountain View and at the high school every year to the New Boston paper. They're doing a wonderful job keeping people apprised of what's going on. And Mountain View is Julia Byam, and at the high school is Marlena Roach. And every month they do a little article in the paper, and they really do a good job.
Nice.
So thank you to them for keeping people updated.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else, commendations? Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I went to the Internet Safety for Families presentation. It was very informative. It was very eye-opening. It was unfortunately not very well attended. Ms. Milligan did say she would love to host it again. Matt has said he'd be happy to come back. So if anyone else wants to go to the presentation, sounds like a great opportunity to bring him back because it's very important info.
And we're so lucky to have him come.
Definitely.
So he is from the New Hampshire Task Force of the Internet Crimes Against Children. He's also a former Goffstown parent. His kids graduated from here. Former softball coach. Matt is very invested in our community and is an incredible resource. So we're so fortunate that he was able to come.
Nice.
He was great and his dog was amazing too. So.
Now, is that similar to the one they used to do at the parent night?
Yes.
Open house at the middle school every year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Similar.
they are very informative, a little
Yep.
scary with all
I was
the
going to say it was a great
information.
presentation. I was a little cautious of using that word.
Yeah, but it is good to know. Anyone else? Accommodations, good news? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Public comment? I see no public comment, so we'll move on to the approval of the December 4th school board meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to read them? Anybody see anything?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment.
Sure.
I had mentioned that I was a little bit concerned about Bartlett and not giving the interventionists in our budget. I know there was no discussion, but just wanted to make sure it was noted in the minutes that I brought that concern up, please.
And where should it go?
In the section about the Bartlett presentation, which is page...
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Page 9?
Yes, in the middle. It was toward the end of the Bartlett discussion, so I just appreciate it being noted.
Did you get that, Denise?
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, anything else? All right, so I'll need a motion to pass as amended.
Motion to move as, approve as amended.
Second.
Thank you, Jared. Ginny, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, 3 unanimous. Before we move on, I just want to make note that the programs of studies has been taken off tonight's agenda, and we'll be doing it on January 8th, just before we go any further, so you all know. All right, A and F, Scott.
Sure. There's a large number of items, but I think we can go relatively quickly. So tonight you have a manifest before you from December 5th through December 18th in the amount of $2,473,516.06. So with that, I'll just review the highlights. The major items are in terms of your payroll, taxes, and benefits are over $1.5 million. Special ed activity, a little over $106,000, and these are for mostly out-of-district placement costs as well as special education contracted services. General expenses are a little over $683,000. Most notable are some larger ticket items, $208,000 in change for regular ed transportation. Please note that was for 2 months. SAU 19 is your December assessment. That was a little over $181,000. Again, Wally Computer, $121,976. That was mostly IT equipment, Wi-Fi density project. CSSI, you'll recall that we did the bus turnaround at Mountain View Middle School. That project has concluded, and therefore their final payment was made, $65,000 in change. That was grant funded. Another noteworthy one is Energy Management Consultants, $15,000, Goffstown High School Theater, final payment. That was for project management, project oversight. That project is concluded. So what will happen in that January 8th meeting, we're going to give you the conclusions of a couple of projects. One is the theater, one is the turf field. Because there's some reimbursements for the capital reserve fund and from impact fees, you'll be taking some just votes on those 2 projects. Getting back to the manifest, Ones that you don't always see, College Board, that's student testing, a little over $9,200. We have had several issues with repairs needed for HVAC and plumbing here at the high school from Bluen Services, $83.54. And lastly, WB Mason is mostly paper and school supplies, a little over $8,100. As usual for this time of year, we did buy food and commodities through the food service budget, and that was a little over $27,000. So, I don't know if
Anybody
there's
have
any
any
questions on the
questions?
manifest summary?
All right, so I'll need a motion.
Motion to approve the manifest as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
By Nicole. All right, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
So next on your agenda is the default budget approval, and you'll recall that in December, the school board approved the default budget. This is something that is statutorily your obligation. You have before you the draft default budget, which totals $55,401,923. There was a one-time appropriation regarding the turf field, which was $500,000 for this particular fiscal year, so that comes out as a one-time appropriation. And then because there were you have CBAs, collective bargaining agreements, a lot of these were increases due to CBAs. A lot of your wages and your benefits were attributed to that in terms of the additions. But by law, should the proposed budget fail, the school district would operate on the default budget again, which was that number of $55,401,923. If the board approves it tonight, which I hope you will, the board has to sign that. My hope is that I'll hit the button here, and then throughout the meeting, I'll print the copies off, and then I can pass it around. You can sign it. So that's it for the default.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Move to approve the default budget as presented.
Motion by Ellen, do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? No? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
So the next one, I'm going to defer to Jared Talbot, who is our Budget Committee representative, to discuss the Budget Committee changes, which are in your packet.
Okay, so for our budget committee, we've went through the school's budget, the proposed budget, several times. They agreed to move our number to the public hearing, which will be on January 9th, which is a Tuesday. I'll get more into that in a moment. But our budget that was initially sent to them was $55,719,910. They removed, through voting, $10,000. So our actual proposed budget at this point in time is $55,709,910. That's a total appropriation, I apologize. That's for everything. Things that they voted to remove was from the district line. They cut our admin contracted services. They cut it by $7,500. I believe it was at $10,000?
Yeah, we had a plus 500 in the new column, so in essence, it was cut by about 8,000.
Yeah, so we asked for more money, but they looked at our actuals and they cut it. So unfortunately, the new total for that line, and I believe everybody has it in their packet, right, Scott?
Yeah.
The new total for that, for the proposed budget would be $3,000. So again, this is a situation where if we went back to the default, we'd have the $7,500, but if the proposed is actually voted and approved, it will now be $3,000 for that line. The second line was removing postage. They cut postage for the high school by $2,500, so our new total is $5,000. It was at $7,500. So those are the two things that were voted on and were removed. However, I did want to share with the team some other things that were talked about and actual votes that were taken that were not approved by the budget. The first one, which we all know was coming up, was reducing our stipends to 0. Healthy debate about that, but the majority of the budget committee kept our stipends as they are. There was another healthy discussion about removing The district professional services from 10,500 to 3K. I cannot remember exactly what line it is. I do have it marked somewhere. But they were looking at our history of our professional services and what we used. That failed. They had a thought to remove all dues and fees that were not for certification purposes. So our dues and fees to the school board, dues and fees to the superintendents, dues and fees for the principals. They wanted to remove all of those. That failed after much discussion. They wanted to remove it from a bunch of different lines. There was about 30 or so lines that they wanted to remove. Student transportation for the middle school, specifically sports, they're again looking at our actuals, saying, hey, if we aren't spending this money, let's reduce it. We did reaffirm that, this is kind of missing people. We actually have open spots. This is something that's needed, that parents are driving kids for middle school sports, but we do want to have those buses in. So that line item failed to have that cost reduction. Printing and binding for GHS. They wanted to reduce it from 6,500 to 3,000. Again, I reaffirmed our position that we don't give student handbooks to all of our students at the high school, but we do print them out for the lower classmen. So if they have them, they can get the parents to look at them. Again, that failed. And then there was another line for GHS, I believe it was transportation. They wanted to cut it by like $1,500, again, just me with actuals. But that had to do with a lot of our other sped or other transportation activity. The important thing that I'm trying to list here is they were looking at all of our line items. They were looking at our history and saying, hey, if you didn't spend this 2 years ago, why is there an increase now? I reminded them, it was a COVID, coming out of COVID, we didn't spend a lot of money at that point. We gave it back to the taxpayers, but this is still needed. So, Scott, I'd like to commend you for the work that you did. But out of all of our work, they only cut $10,000 at this point in time. So what does that mean going forward? Budget committee will not look at school budgets at all anymore until public hearing. Public hearing is going to be on January 9th. So we have our school board meeting on the 8th. I'll be having the budget committee meeting on the 9th for public hearing. That is when we take public comments on all of our budget items, whether it's town, whether it's school, whether it's warrant articles. We listen to the public. The budget committee will then make any amendments that are needed at that point. So that will be the final time the budget committee will be able to change our proposed budget number, is on January 19th.
Oh, sorry,
real
Al,
quick,
I was
'cause
still,
don't-
I thought Jared was.
Because I don't remember, who does the presentation on the 9th?
The budget committee.
Budget committee
The
does
budget
that
committee.
one.
So just kind of reminding people what the order of operations are is, budget committee has a public hearing. If there are any changes at that, they will vote on those changes, because again, the warrant article, then we would have to change for any proposed changes to our proposed budget. That would happen on the 9th, and the meeting right after that for the school budget, the school board budget. Then we go to deliberative session, and that is when we present it to the deliberative group, all voters that would come. And again, they have the opportunity to make changes during deliberative session. And if there are changes, again, we would have to vote on to accept those changes.
Or not?
Well, it would be, we accept them, we either vote to recommend or vote to not recommend.
What date's the deliberative?
Deliberative, I believe it's in our packet
Yeah,
later
it's
on.
later on, February 5th.
I know
we'll
we're
get-
jumping
we'll
around
get-
in our
yeah,
agenda a
we'll
little
get
bit
that later.
further, but
Okay.
I figured
Can
just
I
knock
ask
them all
a
at
quick
once.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this admin contracted services IT, I'm wondering if we know if that was any money slated for the website update? Because I know we've
No.
had that, no, that was not that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a line that could be used for that
It could have
purpose.
been, but it was not.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Ellen, go ahead.
Just real quick, Jared, you said they were looking at past couple of years' budgets. So did we when we went line by line through this. Are these things that we didn't see, or what did they see that,
I know that we saw all the lines that they did, of course.
yeah,
But I think we have a lot more contextual knowledge than the budget committee has.
Yes.
We always talk about it every meeting. Why
Yes.
are we overspending? Why are we underspending? What are our
Right.
needs? They don't have a lot of that knowledge that we have just by sitting in this room. So it's really the education and communication of reminding them of what we do and why we need it. And then if we do a good job, then they vote to not cut our budget. If we do a bad job, then they vote to cut our budget. But Retta was there as well, so I'd also welcome any feedback Retta has from the meeting, who was in the audience taking taken some counts from people, I think.
I wanted to make sure we on TV let it be known when these meetings are, because it is important that the public come. And even if there's nothing being changed, it's important that the voters know what these budgets are for. And if there is some contention, large or small, the public, I have always felt, needs to understand where the parties are coming from. And as much as we can as a board, have the public understand what it is we're doing with these funds and what we do if we end up having unanticipated revenues or unexpended funds, and how we manage that. I think it's important that the public know and come out, spend the time and learn about it a bit. So
Right,
that's
thank
my
you, Ellen.
spiel for those meetings.
Right. Go ahead, Scott.
I just want to, I thought that the process this year between the school board and the budget committee, there's a lot of due diligence going on. And the thing that with the budget committee, yes, there were a few that went deep into the weeds on, I guess, shall I say, but there were some recommendations to reduce the budget, and then when provided with the reasons why, there must have been at least a half a dozen motions that got withdrawn. So that, to me, I think speaks volumes of the work that many of the members did, that, they went in there, they thought that there was an opportunity, to perhaps reduce the budget, but once they heard the explanation from Jared and myself, they withdrew their motion. So that, I think, was a very positive outcome as far as I was concerned.
Right, thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
I watched the meeting from home, and I think you guys did a spectacular job. There was a lot going on with that meeting. There were a lot of different motions. It was hard to really understand the impact of the motions because they weren't all that well defined. But I think you guys did a really nice job. Well done. Well done.
So do we need a motion for this tonight,
Yeah,
Scott?
you would need a motion
If we're gonna approve
to
it.
accept, the budget committee's changes and
Changes.
adopt that number, Jared, as the budget as the school board's budget.
Yeah, so this will be the first time that we do this. There are going to be many other times that we do this. So what we'd be making a motion for is accepting the Budget Committee's FY25 budget for a total appropriation of $55,709,910. So that's just accepting what they came up with. We're not going to vote for recommending or not recommending at this time. That is
Okay.
later at
That's
different
later
meetings.
on.
This is
Okay.
just to a vote to say they did their work and we're accepting this number at this point in time.
Okay.
And this is the number that would be presented if we vote yes on this to the public?
At the public hearing.
At
Yeah.
the public hearing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you
So,
making that motion?
I will make that motion to accept the Budget Committee's findings for our proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25.
I'll second.
And Ginny seconds. Thank you, Jared. Any further discussion?
If I
Seeing,
Make just one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have, for a number of years now, invited the Budget Committee
Mm-hmm.
to all our budget process. And had they been here, and if I remember correctly, I don't think anybody was here, maybe one or two people, they would have been well-informed ahead of time. And, I'm glad they didn't cut huge amount, but the information is readily available to them. And I think even at times, after we've asked questions, we invite them to ask during our budget deliberations.
Right.
So I would encourage Budget Committee members to take advantage of that invite during budget season
right, thank you.
and hear what it's about and what's
Right.
going on.
Thank you, Ellen. So we have a motion, we have a second. I saw no further discussions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. We're unanimous. Thank you, Jared and Scott.
All right, next is warrant article recommendations, and in A&F, there was a discussion about possibly having this on the January 8th meeting. The Budget Committee will meet the following evening. So I think what came of that discussion at the A&F meeting was that we would hold off on making recommendations this evening due to the absence of a couple of members. And then authorize myself and Jared to provide the draft warrant articles to the Budget Committee for their meeting this week, so they have advanced knowledge of them. Jared, did I clarify that?
Yeah, I think you're fine. So really it is, I'd like to make a motion to advance Article 3, which is for Facilities Capital Reserve Fund deposit. I'd like to make a motion to advance that to the Budget Committee. Again, I'm not asking for recommendation
Right.
for or against. I'm just saying, let's make a motion to let them know that this Article 3 is coming to them. That way we can discuss it tomorrow, and they'll be prepared for the public comment on January 9th.
So is it just Article 3?
Yeah, because I don't think we have to advance Article 4 because that is not our warrant article.
Agreed.
So
Right.
I will
Okay.
let them know that there is an Article 4.
Yep.
The chairman know that two articles should be discussed. One is from us, which would be Article 3. There is a petition by the public for Article 4. I will read it if there is no representative from the public to present that to them. But again, I'm not asking for us to recommend, not recommend at this
But it's
point.
just so you can talk to them about it
Exactly.
tomorrow night. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So do you want to make that motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to submit Article 3 for the capital, Facilities Capital Reserve Fund deposit to the Budget Committee.
Second.
Second by Ellen. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you, Jared.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Now, as you notice, I didn't actually include the number, because I think that we need to talk about that
right,
number.
yeah.
So,
Right,
I
we
don't know
have
when
to
you
do
want
that.
to do that.
Um,
Is that later on?
I don't think it is. All right, do we want to discuss that a little bit right now?
You could do it right now.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Scott.
Well, it's not.
Or
So
who wants to open it?
Last year, $250,000 was placed into the capital reserve fund. I'm going to bring up your budget packet, which, in your budget packet, it tells you what is the balance of the capital reserve fund. At the A&F meeting, we talked about, what are some of the projects that we have on the horizon? What are some that we've already earmarked for that? So I'm just going to bring that up, but Jared had mentioned that, and again, I have no problem providing a list of potential projects to give to the Budget Committee. So in terms of supporting the need for a $250,000 deposit into the CRF. So most of the use of CRF is for planned projects. Every once in a while, there's a project that we include, like we just did this past year with the boiler at Glen Lake, where we decided to replace that. Sometimes we proactively do things as well. So it's a combination, mostly a planned project, but sometimes it's in response to something breaking down and we have to fix it. And there's funding available for that. So I have no problem, providing Jared with a list of those particular projects. I just want to bring up the balance and everything now. Goffstown, CRF, here we go. All right, so as of, I compiled this in November 9th was the latest one of 2023. And as of now, uncommitted expenses, about $210,000. I can share with you that over the last year, Goffstown High School theater renovation, $300,000. Glen Lake boiler was $36,000 and change. Goffstown High School fire panel was $56,000 and change. The tractor replacement was $50,000, and the Mountain View rooftop unit replacement, $65,000. Leaves us with around $210,000. So all of those items that we talked about are on our CIP, and that's where I would go in terms of that. One of the I wouldn't say challenges per se, but I would just look at projects that we have on CIP that are scheduled in the this year and next year, and more or less come up with a list of what we would try to accomplish, in doing so.
Go ahead, Ellen.
I know, Scott, we have seen these lists in the past. I know I'd appreciate seeing what we've done this year and what it's cost and how we get to the balance we have, and then what's anticipated in the next year or two, and their anticipated costs. So and the public needs to see that too. We're making, I think, very good use of these funds and being proactive and planning the big ticket item maintenance activities for all our schools. And I would appreciate, as a board member, having that list and being able to share with people when we see them.
Right. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jerry.
Scott, do you actually, are you able to tell us what you have earmarked for the CRF for the next couple fiscal years? Like what that would cost? 'Cause I know that you kind of delineate, say, this would be CRF, this would be from the budget, this
Yeah,
would be
I
something
mean,
else.
I have to look. Honestly, I wasn't prepared to talk about that this evening. It's not that I can't, I just have to look it up.
Well, I'll do some song and dance while you're playing around with your filters. The reason why I bring this up, and I think we've all heard it, is, you know, a lot of people are concerned about their taxes, especially with the last cycle that came up. It's going to be hard, not to say impossible, to try to get this amount of money from the Budget Committee. I know it's important, but I would say that we might want to look at a smaller number. That's my opinion on this. Unless if we can give strong declaratory statements of what we're going to use this money for in the next couple of years and why we need it in the CIP and maintain it. And the reason why I say that is people are concerned about their taxes. We've gone up in our budget. The town's gone up by 12%, I think, on their budget. We're going to be looking at that. There are 4 collective bargaining agreements that are being put to the voters. There's a lot of money on the table, and I'm just concerned that people might see this and say no, versus we ask for something less, maybe they'll say yes. But I think it's really making the comms of this is why we need it, and if it really supports what our plan is, then I'd say let's go for the whole amount. But I'm just concerned about the $250K at this point.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Does this also kind of dovetail with the municipal lease agreement? Because wouldn't some of those projects also be covered by the municipal lease?
Yeah, and that's where, but certain things are not. Like like a fire panel, for an example, that would not be, that might not be something that might fit into that.
Okay.
Or bathroom renovation. So certain things that may or may not be allowed.
Only some things can be leased, is the
Correct.
reason we have the other fund.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you know, we're still going through that 54-page report, but there are certain things that I know are part of that, like air handler replacements, and we have HVAC and air conditioning units that are 20. We have a lot of units that are over 20 years old. Those are all eligible to be as part of that municipal lease. But a bathroom renovation may or may not be. You know, so those are the types of things. So, and there's plenty, you know, of those things that we have on here in terms of bathroom renovations alone, fire panel at Mountain View, even if, we're gonna talk a little bit later about replacing our security cameras through a SAFE grant, if we have any things that are not covered by this grant, which we believe will be the case, because we're replacing existing capital asset, that would be allowable. So that could be about $50,000 alone, potentially. Doors is another thing where we have, you know, we replace doors periodically because they don't last forever. I'd have to go, and then certainly roof sections could be part of the municipal lease, but if there's one, I don't know, I have to talk to Randy. I think we have a couple that are not doing all that great, where we might want to do them, you know, sooner rather than later, like this summer, as opposed to waiting a year or two for that municipal lease. And then there are things like replacing carpeting, tiles, some other things that are needed, but yet may not fit into that. So.
Thanks, I was just trying to understand both together, so I.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
No,
it's a
good
great
question.
question because they do intermix a bit.
Right.
All right, so what is everybody's thought on the CRF? Go ahead, Brian.
I would just share, I hear where Jared's coming from. I wonder if a lower number changes votes. So having watched the Budget Committee from the first several years where this was an idea before it got approved by this board, so I know there are strong opinions by some Budget Committee members, and I don't know that a different number changes their vote. So that's one thing I would be mindful of. The next piece is we need to be really thoughtful about our facilities. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million of projects that we need to do in the years to come here. So we don't need less money, we need more money. So I agree about people's tax bills. The thing that I would always say is, yep, your tax bills are high because in the state of New Hampshire, we have an unconstitutional way that we pay for public education. Fix that, and all of a sudden, your tax bill all of a sudden likely looks much more manageable. That doesn't give anybody any relief, but I would always share with people, the reason your tax bill is high is because of how we fund public education in this state. And unfortunately, a community like Goffstown really, really gets punished. Gets punished.
Go ahead, Ellen.
If I remember correctly, there was some discussion a while back about a bond proposal to help with, because we know we have so many capital projects. Is that going to be coming forward this coming year?
No.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing with that's the piece that Scott was speaking to a little bit ago. We had hoped that there might be a project that the board could consider putting before the voters this March. We think that we're not ready to do that. And it's important to remember, for lease purchase projects like this that we were considering, you don't need voter approval. I think depending upon what the scope of the bond would be, that would be whether we feel it's appropriate to bring it forward or not. But one of the things that you might hear proposed by us, or you will hear proposed by us, is there are projects that we could do that we think will have a minimal cost, but has a significant amount of cost avoidance. So for example, if you're spending less money on energy, you have reduced rates, you have incentives for rebates, et cetera, we might be able to do a project that doesn't cost very much at all, and we pay for with energy savings over time. Those are the kinds of things I think we need to consider, but it's important to know there are tens of millions of dollars of projects that are on our CIP. And I agree, there's no great time. There's never a great time, right? And being mindful of the town with their budget increase and 4 collective bargaining agreements, it's always going to be a challenge. But I think that these facilities are the most valuable asset that the taxpayers of Goffstown own, and we need to make sure that we take care of them.
And the lease information we'll have more over the next couple of board meetings.
Yeah, in fact, we're planning, what meeting did we decide?
January
January 24th.
Okay, so the second meeting in January, we're going to have the folks who did the audit come in and present the report. We'll also provide everyone with, the report will take you time to read. So I want to just give you
I'm going to email it.
fair warning.
I'm going to email it this week as a
Okay.
PDF, and if you need a copy of it, I'll have a couple of copies at the SAU for you to pick up if you want, because it's 54 pages, right? Or more, maybe it's 80.
It took me a long time to read it. So by the time
Yeah.
you kind of go through and you have to understand exactly what they're talking about, and I was kind of flipping back and forth, there's a lot to take in. So if you have the chance to read the report before they do the presentation, I would really recommend that. And Scott, maybe we can put it on the website ahead of time so that if,
Yeah.
community
My-
members want to take a look at it.
What my plan is, because that it is quite a bit to digest, is to get you the report this week and then to put it on our agenda for both the 8th and the 24th. The 8th, I will give you a very, very high-level overview.
Like
of
an
it.
executive summary.
Executive summary of it, and then on the 24th, energy management consultants will come in, and it'll be probably a good 45 minutes to an hour presentation. They did a soup to nuts assessment of all of our school buildings. So, and then from there, I believe that you'll be more apt to ask the best possible questions because you'll have previewed this a couple of times. It's just a lot to digest. My hope is that by talking about it a couple of weeks ago, talking about it tonight, getting you that report, having it on the agenda on the 8th, doing it again the following meeting, you'll be really well versed in kind of what's contained in there. And as Brian said, I think this is really the most important takeaway, is that we, EMC, and I've taken Randy and Brian and myself, we've looked at it. There is the potential of doing about $3 million worth of projects that include heating controls, which is already on our CIP. We already did the RFP. already for that, lighting and other measures, doing some of our HVAC systems where, as Brian mentioned, the upfront rebates that you get from Eversource and manufacturers, plus the cost avoidance of the energy, will take care of most of your lease purchase payments over a 15 to 17-year period. So, and that's because they front load all of the savings, those rebates, like in the first year, and the financing of it makes abundant sense. Whereas some of these other bigger projects like roofs and pavement and some other, that will not have as much bang for your buck in terms of energy savings, et cetera. And then the lease purchase will be one that would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not, not negligible. So, and then that would be a next year type of thing. So that's kind of where we're at. We think we can accomplish a lot on our CIP over the next 2 summers if we proceed with the lease purchase, and I think you'll see that through the presentation.
So going back to Article 3, I get the impression we're not ready to come up with a number tonight, but there's a lot to think about. We're going to have to make recommendations on the 8th of January.
Right, if you're going to change the number, that really has to happen.
Happen on the 8th, yes,
Exactly.
for all of them. Go ahead, Ellen.
I would like to see on the list of what's potentially happening in their costs in the next year or two, but also how have we used, I know we've gotten it before, the last several years, because the 250 we've been asking for and receiving from the taxpayers.
It's in your budget packets, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's in here?
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you look in your packet.
Just look in the table of
Yeah, he's
contents,
got,
it'll
look
say.
at the table of contents, he's got a whole section on this.
Okay.
It's already there.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from, Jared. I think everyone's feeling the taxes. I think historically, though, we've been under-investing in our facilities, so I tend to feel like I would like to make sure we keep this money here. You hear carpets and you think, why do you really need carpets? We're talking like moldy, yucky carpets. Like these aren't, like it's gross. I'm in and out of the schools a lot, and I think we do need to put that money aside, so my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Go ahead, Jared.
No, and I agree with Brian. This is really counting votes.
Yeah.
There's going to be those people, we could put in $1, they're going to say no.
Right.
So this is just where.
I know, it's a hard one.
So
That's why I bring it up, because we might be close on this one.
And I liked
Right.
your idea before when you said, hey, let's come up with a list of the things. We already have a list that we've done, and then it's a list of what we plan on doing over the next year or two with these funds, and I think that's appropriate, so.
So
that's easy to
Scott,
do.
if you could bring that list January 8th.
I'm gonna work on it tomorrow
everybody
because
needs
Jared will
to-
need it for Thursday anyway.
Yeah, I know you guys will have it, but for the board members to have
Yep.
it January 8th, and then we need to be prepared to vote on these
Yeah,
warrant
you'll have
articles.
it way before that.
Okay.
And then, well, we've already kind of covered the municipal lease purchase, so that's kind of done. EMC will be here on the 24th. And again, you'll have copies of that. Prior to that, on the agenda was policy KFR rate changes. As I explained to the A&F committee, Justin, our athletic director, Justin Huft, is getting requests to use the turf field by outside organizations, both locally and not non-locally. But we do not have in our policy, there's no rate for that because we didn't have a rate. We didn't allow anyone to rent the varsity game field when it was grass because we didn't want to destroy it. So it was never up for rental. So in speaking with Justin over the last couple of weeks, we've also reached out to neighboring communities that do have these turf fields. And we're proposing just rate changes tonight. We have to make, for your approval, we have to make some policy changes as well, but that needs to go through the policy committee, not necessarily, rate changes typically, A&F discusses them, and then the board, it's more of an immediate thing. I have to incorporate language from the last meeting about the prohibition of bounce houses. We now have cheer mats, which now we know that there's an organization that wants to rent cheer mats, which we haven't, so I have to include that. So there are a few other things that Justin and I have to work on, but that's going to go through the policy review committee. So who's ever on that committee, you'll see that probably at your next meeting. But tonight, what I'm going to highlight here is just really a couple of different things. So on the first page, you'll see that there is a rate of $25 per hour with a 2-hour minimum for co-curricular athletic event staff. So if we are going to have somebody use the turf field in the press box, we need somebody to be a game manager or to be a manager of that event. And then if you go to page, pretty much this would be on page 2 and 3. If you're a Category A organization, and that would really only be the town of Goffstown for the most part, there would be no fee. But if you are a Category B organization, it is $100 to rent the field for 2 hours minimum. If you want it with the lights, it's $200 for a 2-hour slot, and then if you're using the press box, it's $25. As I mentioned, at A&F, there is no intent to rent the press box for like birthday parties. I know Wendy wanted to have one herself, but we had to decline her. I'm only kidding. It's really more if somebody was having an event and you were going to use the scores, and they were going to be using it for using the scoreboard and announcing, then there would be a fee. And then if they're a Category C organization, and I should let you know that we are having discussions with New England College. So New England College is reinstituting their football program, and they will not have a field in time, so they may wish to use our field on Saturdays or Sundays or something. And they would be a Category C user. So you'll see there that the price is obviously a bit higher for Category C organizations. And Justin just needs to have the ability to start to sign off on some of these folks who want to use it in the community.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, we can entertain a motion.
These are not per hour, these are per the 2-hour rate.
Yeah, the 2-hour.
The only
minimum.
exception is the $25 per hour.
That's at
for
the top.
For the first one, which is for a staff person.
I'll motion to approve the rate change as presented.
Seconded.
All right, so Caroline, and then Jared, you second?
Yes.
All right, Ginny, you had a hand up?
Yeah. Is there any supervision that goes with renting? Like, do we just rent
Yes.
it out and then?
No, that's why that's that $25 an hour for
Okay.
someone to be there.
That's
And
the
then if
staff.
it requires custodial staff as well, which it may or may not,
Okay.
then they will also have to pay that as well.
Okay, and as far as the fields go? Any supervision out in the fields?
It depends upon the use. So if there is an organization that wants to borrow it for practice, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's just the field, we might not have somebody there. But if they were having a game
Or a tournament.
or a tournament, then there's going to be people there, and they're going to have to. And depending upon the size of that tournament, we could request them to have 2 people and request there be a police detail.
Okay.
So it's.
So I was just wondering if
yeah.
you've thought of all of those different
I'm
things.
sure we haven't thought about everything, but we have thought about that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ginny. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
So lastly, I have one more thing, and that is the hazard mitigation grant and the SAFE grant. So hazard mitigation, we are partnering with the town of Goffstown, the fire chief, who has put in a preliminary letter of intent on the school district's behalf for an emergency generator here at Goffstown High School, so that the high school can serve as the primary shelter in case of emergencies like flooding. No pun intended today. And with that, right now, we believe that we're going to be in the next step. So we are working with Chief Murray on, the grant application, and we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll be successful. If we do get that grant, there is a match. That's 20% match, I believe, or is it 20%?
25.
25% match, which there can be services in kind that are used to offset that. Certainly, we'll be in discussion with our town partners to see if there are services they can provide on that, but we'll partner with the town, on those. If we are fortunate to do that, I will tell you that you cannot use the capital reserve fund as a match because it's not an existing capital asset. So you will either have to use existing budget dollars, potentially use your contingency fund, but you cannot use, you can't use a CRF. Well, so we'll keep you posted on that one. I don't anticipate anything in the short term on that. SAFE grant. There is included in your packet some good news. We are on a list of preliminary awardees that will hopefully be approved at the next Governor and Council's meeting in January. And you'll see from that list that Goffstown has received preliminary SAFE grant approval for a little over $410,000 for the replacement of security cameras, in some cases, the installation of strobe emergency lights, as well as rekeying 2 or 3 of our schools with door locks, the existing door locks. So I would be substantially remiss if I did not acknowledge Steve Bourget, our IT director, and Gary Geroliman, our prior IT director, who did all of these grants. We collectively, the administration, had the foresight that these grants were going to happen. Steve had captured all of the quotes, and then when this thing went live,
The day it went live.
Gary was in there, and Steve, and they were pumping these things in. This thing closed, Brian, at what?
So the state announced today that anyone who submitted anything after 3:30 got waitlisted. So the ability to be ready when the window opens, that you have all your projects already figured out, that you have your costing done, you have your backup information, and to be able to submit those right away when the window opened, again, served us well. So we have done this for every single round. And the first grant was all timing, and we were very fortunate that we were ready and we got in early. But anything that came in after 3:30, they missed.
And that was well over $12 million worth of projects that didn't get anything. So next time you see Steve and Gary, pat him on the back and say,
Yeah.
attaboy, because great job. SAU 19
Hang
total.
on one
so
second,
New
Scott. Ellen
Boston.
hang on one second. Ellen, go ahead.
How does receiving that grant, or does it, impact the list of items on CIP?
It's on, the replacement of security cameras is on our CIP.
Right,
So we'll be able to cross some
We'll be
things
able to
off
cross
the
some of
list.
these things off.
okay, but does that mean we need to reduce our request in CIP, for CIP
No.
funds? Okay.
CIP is a document that's a standalone, at one
Yep.
point in time.
Yep.
So next year,
We'll
when
we'll update it.
we will update it.
Yep.
And,
And projects that have been done
Yep.
will come off.
I understand that, I'm just thinking about the ongoing amount that we request each year, and if we receive grants, is that amount still needed?
Or you're saying for the capital reserve fund
Right,
deposit?
right.
I would say, well, that would be at the discussion for the board, but I would say yes.
That's why I'm asking, or do we move things up? If we can take care of items through grant, other things can fill it, and we still move forward, because that list is not ever going to end.
Go ahead, Scott.
yeah, so the other, New Boston, obviously our partner here at SAU 19, looks like they're going to get a little over $70,000, so over $481,000 of these SAFE grants, keeping in mind that the total award was $9.7 million, and Goffstown and New Boston were fortunate enough to receive over $481,000. So, I don't know, like, Steve's getting a hug tomorrow at our staff meeting, so, does he know that, or it's okay, right, we can do
Well, he
that.
knows it now.
Yeah,
Sorry, Stephen.
could be an awkward moment. And then the last thing I didn't have on the agenda, but I wanted to let you know, you should have a copy of it. There's a letter from New Hampshire Retirement System in your packets. New Hampshire, I wanted to let the board know, and to get into the minutes, that New Hampshire Retirement has switched over their software, their package, after 20 years. And they did some parallel testing initially, but it was not ready for prime time. And there have been numerous problems with this switchover, to the point where it's a minimum of 10 hours a week of workload for both our payroll coordinator and Laura, our assistant BA, trying to fix all of these exceptions. What we learned
Hundreds of them.
hundreds of these exceptions. So what we learned, because we talked to Town Hall as well, that they have the same problem, but they're on a different software package called Munis. We're on eFinance. What we learned from talking to our association partners at NASBO, and Kate has partners with all the HR directors, that everyone is having these issues, but nobody was really talking about them. They were just dealing with it. So with that, I can say that the association that I belong to has met, and looks like we're going to be sending a letter on behalf of all business administrators that the crossover to a new system has really been quite painful. And keep in mind that if you mess up with New Hampshire retirement system, if you don't get the data in on time, they fine you. So now there are some school districts who've been fined for no fault of their own, and now they have to go through a formal appeal process. And then we learn that in this letter that they're going to waive the fines through December. But if they don't fix this, this thing could happen through, God knows when. The timeframes in which they're getting back to us is as little as 3, as many as 5 to 7 business days on a return call to try to fix some of these things. So I just wanted you to know that things are not hunky-dory in New Hampshire retirement system land. So as I learn more, and I say that because it's costing us locally a lot of man hours to do it. So I just wanted to get that into the record.
Thank you, Scott.
That's all I have.
All right. Moving on, Budget Committee, is there anything else you want to add to that, Jared?
Just to add that meeting tomorrow right here to talk about the town stuff. So if anybody wants to learn about the town budget and things that, well, we're going to be talking about the town budget tomorrow. So feel free to come. If somebody wants to bring me coffee, that's great, because I have a feeling that we'll probably be here pretty late tomorrow as well.
And that's here at the high school, not at town hall.
That's correct, here at the high school.
Jared, is that with cream, sugar, or blind?
Cream and sugar is fine, but if somebody's going to be nice enough, I'll take it any way I can get it for coffee. That's okay.
Thank you, Jared. All right, P&C, Retta.
Yes, we met this evening briefly to finish up our, we're looking at the awards, and we'll be speaking about those in non-public. We will be meeting again, not the first or not the second Monday of the month, which is January 8th. We'll be meeting on the 22nd at 6 p.m.
22nd or 24th?
Well, it is, I checked a couple of times. Scott was saying the 24th, but I think it's...
Is it the 22nd?
I think it's the 22nd,
Okay.
Monday the 22nd.
Oh, January?
Yes, the
Monday.
24th is a Wednesday.
Yeah,
So the 22nd. Okay.
6.
All right. 22nd. Okay. Thank you, Retta.
Yes.
All right, policy met last week. We have some first reads coming in tonight, and then we'll do second reads. We have our next meeting January 16th at 5:30 at the SAU. All right, C&E, that's you.
Yes, C&E met last week, and we have a program of studies to bring forward to you next month.
Yep.
Did you want me to report now, or do you want me to report out next?
Well,
about our
the
meeting?
program of studies, that was later in the agenda. Was there anything else that,
I'll do it at the
at the
end of
January
May.
8th? Okay.
Yep.
And then you meet again when?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We meet again January 16th at 7 p.m. at the SAU.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. All right, SAU board meeting, we have another one scheduled January 31st at 6:30 at the SAU. Town of Goffstown School District budget hearing, as we know, is January 9th. The deliberative is scheduled for February 5th. We have it at 7 at the high school theater. The question that we need to discuss, in the past, we've had a quick meeting at 6, an hour before, and then if we had to stay after, we could. I know one year we did a meeting after and we were pretty fried. So we would do a light agenda. How does everybody think about having a board meeting at 6? Since we don't do deliberative on Saturdays anymore, we do need to still have a board meeting. So at 6 o'clock work for February 5th, and then we'll go right into the deliberative at 7. Is that all good? All right, so did you get that, Denise? All right, I think that's it with meetings. Go ahead, it's your turn.
Thank you. My first one is I want to welcome Christine Bean to the table, so we're so appreciative, and I would use this as an opportunity to share that we still have 2 open teacher rep positions on the school board, one for elementary and one for middle school. If there might be other teachers that are interested, we would welcome you at this table. So I wanted to let you know that the New Hampshire Education Department has put school districts on notice of a settlement agreement that was reached in a class action lawsuit against McKinsley and Company. This settlement will result in a public school district opioid recovery trust. And this money, there's going to be monies available for people who join this lawsuit. Class member public schools may be eligible to apply for grants received from the trust. So Scott and I have talked about this a couple different times. There's a list of, was it, Scott, 5 or 6 criteria that you had to satisfy. Our quick assessment was we think we don't qualify for this, but we have reached out. I've spoken with all South Central superintendents, and at this point, people are kind of just waiting to see, but I wanted the board to be aware that there's this sort of unknown about this potential for monies as part of this settlement for the opioids. So I wanted to let you know that we will be putting the Public Employee Labor Relations Board, that's the PELRB, on notice. We have Maple Ave, we have lunch monitor positions. We have 2 of them that are not part of the GESS contract, and we have to submit a letter with GESS that captures our intent for these positions to move into the contract during the next negotiation, so we'll be doing that. I wanted the board to know that I've had a number of parents reach out to me with concerns about Manchester School of Technology. Specifically, there have been staffing shortages in programs, and we've had some concerns with a number of the programs that we offered and offer now. So today, Mrs. Lewis, our school counseling coordinator, Mrs. McCann, our school assistant principal, and Mr. McDermott, the curriculum coordinator, and I had a meeting with the Manchester superintendent and assistant superintendent and raised concerns about the HVAC program, plumbing 1, plumbing 2, health sciences, electrical, and automotive technology. I think that they're doing the best they can to try to hire for these positions. It's hard for us now to find elementary teachers. I can only imagine that it's hard to find an automotive teacher. So, but I wanted the board to know that these are services that we pay for and we expect to be delivered, and right now there are some shortcomings. And my last one is Mr. Gross and I met with Mark Fougere and a gentleman named Jeffrey Donahoe. Mark Fougere is a town planner, and he's been hired by the planning department, by the planning board, to reevaluate the impact fee program here in Goffstown. So Scott and I met with Mark and Jeff today and kind of talked at length about what we feel our space needs are and sort of the allowable, permissible elements that you can do under a school impact fee with respect to the statute. Scott and I shared concerns that we've added 14 portable classrooms in the Goffstown elementary schools. 14. That is the equivalent of an entire school that we would need to build to take people out of these modular classrooms. And that does nothing to allow us to consider full-day kindergarten. So the idea that I want the board to be aware that it is possible, depending upon what the report features and what the town decides to do about it, but we potentially would be looking at less money in impact fees. And so there are a couple things that Scott and I think are really important. So when I look at elements of the minimum standards, ED 321.06 specifically, we have classrooms that are smaller than the recommended class sizes for new school construction. So we know that elementary classrooms should be a minimum of 900 square feet. We know that our classrooms are more in the 650 square foot range. So there's a report that was done in 2010 that identifies our school capacity by every single school, and I think we need to revisit that. Because when we look at the minimum standards, if I were to use the per square foot minimum space requirement that's identified in that 321.06, I could cap classes at a lower number, which would mean that the capacity for Maple Ave is much lower than what the town is currently categorizing that. Now, the reason this matters is because impact fees can only be used associated with growth. So there are a couple things that I think we might want to consider, not the least of which is I think we need to engage with Attorney Graham. I think our school district attorney should absolutely be a part of this. If there's the potential for impact fees, which could be potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue that this school district potentially could be in jeopardy, I think we should involve our attorney. And then the other piece that I think we've got to really look at is when we look at our capacities and the need for growth, one of the things that Mr. Fougere spoke about is if we have costs that have been identified by an architect and things that are in our CIP, those are potentially permissible projects. So one thing that I wanted the board to consider is the facilities assessment, the planning committee that we did, the options that that committee looked at, and we all knew what they were. We talked about potentially building a new middle school and using Mountain View as renovated space for elementary schools. We may be wise to start to cost out some of these options so that it's not just a conceptual, that these are actual construction costs based on a number at a point in time. So I would say more to come, but this is something that we might want to codify some of the costs associated with the work that that committee did. Because those projects that the committee brought forward, that's what potentially impact fees could be used for moving forward. So I don't want to be alarmist at this point. They're still sort of in the beginning stages. But I don't know, Scott, anything that you would add? You were there with me.
Yeah, I think we've got to do our due diligence here, like you said, and I did have some conversations with the town planner about, what this was about. So that the town has not done a revision to their impact fee calculations in over a decade, and they should be doing it more frequently. So that's what started this. But I think we need to make sure that there is clarity as to what the statute says about impact fees and what these folks who are charged with developing what those fees are, making sure that everybody's on the same page with what that language means. And that's why I think.
And the interpretation.
And the interpretation
of what
of
are
it,
permissible projects for
Right.
us
Yeah.
and how those align with growth.
Right. And that's not just us, too. I mean, that's something that impact fees are also charged for Parks and Rec. They're charged for our police and fire, as well as DPW. So this impacts all of those entities, not just one.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Something also to consider, and this may, something Brian said, the square feet of our classrooms that exist today below minimum standards, okay? And that's to put 20, 25 kids in, the smaller size room isn't supposed, like we have 6, 7, and maybe even an 800 square foot room, isn't supposed to be for 20 to 25 kids. If you do the math, it's for 15 to 17 kids, and we're putting 20 to 25 kids in a room that is too small. So it's not just that we have smaller space, we're putting the same number of kids in it as if it's a larger space. And that impacts education as well. And there's a lot involved with this idea of what can you do with your space. The number of kids in a small space, I think it's logical. Anybody can see that. That is not sound education, not the best way to go about educating our kids. It's not just, we have small space, okay, we can put just 15 or 17 kids in it, but we don't, because we have no place to put them. So I think it's something the public needs to be aware of, and we need to keep making them aware of.
I agree, Ellen, and probably not surprisingly, I will continue to advocate for more impact fees, not less. We don't need less funding for public education, we need more. So and again, So downshifting from Concord. Why are we talking about this? Because the school building aid program only provides $30 million across every school district in the state now. So again, continued downshifting of costs, but for us, these impact fees, if we ever want to have appropriate elementary school facilities, and again, full-day kindergarten, we're going to need at least 10 classrooms to do full-day kindergarten.
At today's numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah. So is
Yep.
that it?
that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, old business. So a while ago, we were brought the NHIS New Hampshire Immunization Information System. There is some information in our packet that discusses this. If this is something that we want to do, we would need to make a motion tonight. Brian, do you want to talk a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so the immunization registry, again, I would just share that this is voluntary, that parents sign up for this. Our school district would be a read-only. We don't input any data into this, and all school nurses have to complete a required training before they're able to do it. This makes your nurse's job easier.
Well,
So
the parents sign up through their
parents
doctor's
sign up through their
office.
doctor's offices. The doctor's office takes care of all the paperwork, and it just allows our school nurses to not have to chase individual parents to make sure that we have documentation of the appropriate immunizations.
So are there any questions or comments about this? Go ahead, Jenny.
I think it would make sense to go ahead and try it because, like Brian said, it makes the school nurse's job easier. But I think in the long run, it makes the parents' job easier too, because instead of having to get the copy in,
Right.
doesn't get stuck in the backpack, it goes right from the peds office over to the school nurse. If people don't want to participate, they don't have to.
Right, they can choose not to
But-
sign up.
If they do, it's just much easier
Right.
all the way around. So I
Thank you,
think,
Jenny.
we should offer it to people who'd like to do it.
Right. Carolyn?
I would agree, and I think that, what's hard for a parent is that different doctor's offices do the immunizations a little bit differently. So when you're asked to input certain ones, and there should be 4, but your doctor's office did it in 3 doses, something, it's all different. It's hard for a parent to read and input the information, and then you're having conversations back and forth with the nurse, and it just takes a while. So if they're able to just gain the information of what they need from one system. The other thing to, I think, note is that New Hampshire, I believe, is pretty far behind, and that other states have implemented this for a while now, and now New Hampshire is just starting to. So I think that this is really a good thing, and like Brian had said, it's not something where the school district is inputting any information. They're gaining information from parents that give permission for the information to be sought by the school.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jared.
No, I think it's a great idea. Unfortunately, I think this is also fundamentally flawed because there's no reporting to it. How many kids, or how many times is your child being looked at in this database? By who? That is not reporting that's currently part of this law. And I think that, say what you want about the state, they always have data breaches. They always have issues. I understand this is completely voluntary, and I wouldn't discredit anybody that signs up for it. But as a concerned parent, I'm concerned with who is actually accessing it, how many times it's being accessed. There's no report that's being provided to the parents for this in the law. I'll be voting no because of those reasons.
Thank you, Jared. Anyone else? Go ahead, Nicole.
I think we went over this last time. Is it just the immunization records that the nurse has access to in the file?
Yes.
That's all they can see?
That's right.
Okay.
All right, so we would need to, if you're interested, we need to make a motion. If somebody wants to
I'll
do
make
it.
the motion that we, go into the New Hampshire Immunization Information System program on the basis of, well, as it's recommended here.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Do I have a second? By Retta. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
2 noes and abstain. Okay. Okay, so we got 2 noes and the rest yeses. Thank you. Motion passed. All right, we have second reads. There was only 3 policies from last time. Did anybody have any questions or anything? They'll come to the next meeting for moving forward. They're pretty short and sweet. Anything? No? Okay. Did you raise your hand, Joy?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, moving on to new business.
I have no business.
Huh? New business student rep teacher.
Oh, no. Can I just pop this in? You all get a copy of the student handbook tonight. Would you please just look it over? Because I'd like a recommendation at our next meeting, so that they can start printing these.
Yeah.
So if you just look it over so you have the information to talk it over at our next meeting, please.
Jenny, if we have a question as we read through it, can we email you?
Send it
I
to
would,
Wendy?
I would, Wendy.
You're more than welcome to email me any questions that you
Okay.
have. Happy to
Thank you.
answer anything.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. All right, so new business. So at the last meeting, Lil brought up a very good point. I have heard other board members, other boards and districts are allowing student reps and teacher reps to have a vote. It doesn't count, but it allows people to see what they voted on. So we wanted to bring it to you guys to discuss, to see if this is something we're interested in. If we are, then policies have to go to the policy committee because we don't have a policy on it. So did you want to, I know I had
Yeah,
asked
the
for
only
some
thing that I
stuff.
would add to this is something that came up last spring when we did our first student rep session. And at that time, there were a couple of school districts that had already taken this action and were allowing their student reps to have a non-binding vote. The one thing that I would want to stress is it's an optional vote. So as Lil is sitting at the table here, or Mrs. Bean, if they choose to vote, it's their choice. It's not required. So that would be one thing that I would want to reflect in policy. So if for whatever reason there's something that they just don't want to vote on, it's up to them. It's their choice. But I think we are starting to see more school districts that are kind of embracing this. So we wanted to see what the level of interest from the board was. We did not want to pre-assume anything and just start to work on a policy. We wanted to see if there was general interest in this before the policy review committee would take any further action.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I think it's a really good idea. I think it's a good way to show that the board really backs and thinks our student representative is important to us. There's been some talk lately that we don't, as the school board, doesn't think that our rep is important to us, and I know that we all think that way, and I think this would be an awesome way to really show that to the public, that our school board representative is very important to us, and we'll back her with whatever she does. If she wants to have a vote, I think it's important. I think it's a really important position, and having a little bit more responsibility is important because it's a leadership position, and it's very important on a student's transcript as a leadership item going forward. I've had an experience with one of my kiddos that was on the school board as a representative, and it made a difference between one college and another. So I think we have to give our representative that same kind of pride and backing that the colleges are going to give them. So I want to make it very clear what we think about the representative.
So it'd be
And,
student and the teacher rep?
yes.
So it wouldn't
Because
just be
we
one
think the same of our student rep, our teacher rep.
for college?
And she's only been here one day.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else? Go ahead, Retta.
Just continuing on with that, I think it goes beyond to if they're representing their, the other teachers and the other students, it also gives an opportunity for those communities to come to them, and they're represented when we're discussing things by the ability to to have a vote if they choose. The other thing, I'm wondering what the feedback was from any of the school systems that are doing this. Is it, have they done it for a while, that they have any thoughts or I guess?
Still fairly new,
Yeah.
and still a fairly short list, but I would say some of the student reps that I know that I spoke to, Lil, I'm not sure if you had the chance to speak with anyone, that the students felt empowered, that they had kind of the importance of having a vote, that they had a voice. So it seemed to be positive, at least from the perspective of the students who had it at our last session.
I think also it's a really good initiative for, like, once I graduate and another student rep takes my place, or another, if Miss Bean stays on the board, the initiative to kind of like understand and fully immerse yourself in the conversation, and be fully educated, kind of, it helps to have that sort of responsibility and not expectation because it's optional, but just kind of like a guiding, like, understanding, so that way you can further explain to your fellow teachers or fellow students just what's happening. And also that way, when it comes time for elections, student council elections, or that type of thing, students can then kind of feel the professional, like, oh, I can go look at, the notes and see what this student rep voted for, or stuff like that.
Thanks, Lil. Anyone else have any comments? Go ahead.
No, I think it's a great idea. The couple questions that I would have is, would these votes be offered in non-public sessions? Would these votes be offered as part of contracts? So there is some kind of, I agree that more voices are always good. I think it's definitely something, as we get into the policy, those things need to be understood as well.
Right.
Would they be coming into the non-public? And just remembering that these are representatives, they aren't voting for themselves, they're voting on behalf of who they represent. So that's also another important thing that we have to put in the policies, but I'm all for this. Hopefully we have 3 teacher reps.
Yeah.
Get them forward.
Anyone else? Any comments, questions? Ellen?
I'm very hesitant about it because I don't really see a purpose. Or as a voice, I'm all for that, and I wish we'd hear more from any representative who comes to our meetings. I mean, Lily's been here almost every single meeting, and
Right.
I'd like to hear more from them, either us asking, do you have a thought, or them speaking up. I understand being quiet in this group. But as far as having a vote, even though it doesn't count, I think I would like us to welcome those representatives to speak during our board discussions. I would think there would be a great deal more understood by anybody watching the meeting or reading our minutes than how someone voted in something that didn't count for anything. So I'd like to see their voice as actually hearing from them, as opposed to voting on something that really doesn't matter. That's just my thought on it.
No, that's good. Thank you, Ellen. Retta, did you have your hand up?
No, well, I did, just
Okay, I thought you
briefly
did.
concerned about, Denise having to keep track of,
Right.
like, all the people,
Right.
But I'm
She's
sure she,
gifted, though.
I know,
She's
I know
gifted.
she will figure it out.
Nicole, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I think it matters symbolically, even if it doesn't matter to the actual outcome of the vote. And like Lil explained, giving the vote to the teacher and the student rep is an incentive for them to speak up and be part of the conversation and share their voice and be a little more involved. I think that's an impetus to get that involvement and hear their voice more, so I'm for it as well.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I just think so that the public also knows what the whole process is. Lil doesn't just come here on her own and sit in and listen to the meeting and then leave. The school board, the student council gets together and they have meetings and they talk about what goes on at the school board. She gives them a report back and they have discussions on what she reports back to them. And then they go off to each one of their classes and report to their classes. So they have discussions about all of what we're talking about, what we're changing. So Lil comes back in with info from students here. So it's not like she necessarily comes in and says, I have my own ideas about things and I'm going to vote. She would have pretty much, am I right, a background of from her meetings with student council and all the representatives that represent all of the classes at the school, kind of what they're feeling on different topics. And kids will ask her questions. Why are they doing that? I didn't know, and whatever. So it's not just like she would come in and say, oh, I think. It would be kind of like a group discussion and a group vote, pretty much. Am I right on that? Lil?
Yeah, so along with this, one of the student reps that I had been in contact with suggested that we make a committee in student council called Voice. That's what they have at their school, and basically how it works is the student school board representative is kind of the head of that committee, the chair of that committee, and they would have separate meetings where they kind of discuss what happens at the school board meeting, so they keep up just as much as the student rep does, especially because there's only one of me here and only one of Miss Bean here, whereas some schools have like 2 student reps or 3. So that committee could also be put in place to really make sure that it is the student voice that is coming to the table. But that would obviously be a decision for Senora McKinnon and the exec board of student council, but it is an option.
Cool, thank you. Go ahead, Caroline.
I just think back to some of the conversations we've had and, topics that have come up over time. Last year, one that we revisited a number of times was going down to one lunch, and we relied heavily on Lil bringing back information from the student population. And, I think it would be even a step further for her not to just report out of what the students are saying and then let us vote on it. But, if we voted in one way, a majority, and then, she was able to stand up for what the students thought and it was not what we felt, at least she's representing the student population at that point and they can see what she is doing and she can say, I represented you. Which, like Nicole said, whether it's symbolically and it's not contributing to the outcome, I think it really says a lot and gives more power to that position. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Caroline. All right, so it sounds like policy committee should start working on something and then we can bring it back to the board. We have a large number of stuff in the queue, so we will figure out when we're going to put it on the agenda and then we'll bring it back to you guys. If anybody has any ideas, suggestions of stuff that they would want in the policy, send that to me. Like you had a list, I wrote some stuff down that you had said. I tried to write everything down, but seriously, because I don't know if New Hampshire School Boards Association has a model policy on
No, there's
this.
no model policy.
So this
but
would be
we-
all
we
from
have-
scratch?
Not exactly. So
Okay,
there
there
are a
are
couple
some.
school districts have already done this work, so
Okay.
we'll get there.
So we'll work on it.
Yeah.
All right,
Yep.
thank you, guys. Did you have something else, Jenny? Your hand up?
Oh, no,
okay.
no.
All right. All right, so the next is we have a couple of field trip requests.
Yeah, so these field trip requests are for overnights. They are in New Hampshire, but there are 2 overnight trips. One is for Jazz All-State Festival, February 8th through 10th, and the other is for All-State Festival for Music, and this is at Concord High School from April 4th through 6th. So our music teachers will be there, Mr. DeRocher, Mr. Belding. Both of them will be at both events. And so one of the events is only 1 student, the jazz is only 1 student, and for the All-State, we're anticipating 15 students.
I'll be there.
Nice. All right, does anybody
Only
have
if it gets
any-
approved, you will.
Right.
You want to vote on that?
Anybody have any questions, comments? We can do a motion together if you want, or separately, if anybody's ready.
Move to approve both All-State Festival field trips.
Thank you, Nicole. Do I have a second? Who over here? Is it Ginny? All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. You are going.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we have a few first reads here. Nothing to do tonight. They'll come back at the next meeting for seconds. So some of them are new policies, some are just combining stuff. So if you have any questions, just let us know. All right, staffing.
So we have a number of notifications for leave of absence, 3 coming before you, 1 for our school nurse at Maple Ave, 1 for a teacher, 2 for teachers at Mountain View. So you'll see at the top the leave of absence, and you'll see down below we have filled 2 of those positions with long-term subs. So we've been working very hard to be able to cover all of the leads. So no action required, just notification for your information. For your approval this evening, we have a new teacher, which will be for the remainder of this school year in a vacant elementary first grade position at Bartlett of Ann Bovair.
All right. Do I have a motion or any questions? I need a motion to approve the
I'll
nomination.
make a motion to approve the teacher nomination as presented.
Thank you, Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I saw Retta. Sorry, Jenny. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
Thank
Okay.
you. And just one more thing that, that I asked Kate to put on the staffing sheet. Our data technician position, this is the person who works with Betsy Murdoch, our data specialist. She's retiring this year, and that's a position that has a fair amount of institutional knowledge. So I would like to post early and see if there's the ability to do some overlap with that position. We have a slew of unfilled para positions, so from a cost perspective, we would certainly be able to absorb this cost, but I wanted the board to know that that was my intent. I'd like to be able to try to do some overlap, some cross-training before our person departs, or potentially after our person departs to get them to come back and do some knowledge sharing. But I just wanted you to know that I plan on moving forward with that.
Yeah, that was mentioned in A&F as well.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
I'm sorry
So
that
you
I
don't need a
didn't
motion.
report that out.
No, I would just say if there's, it looks like general consensus of the board, of course, you'll approve any nomination that I bring forward, but
Right.
this feels like one that would be pretty
It's
important
a
to
big
give out on
replacement.
It is a
early.
big one.
Yep.
All right,
Thank
is
you.
there, yeah, thanks, Brian. Is there other business that may legally come before the meeting? Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that at our last board meeting, there was discussion about looking at the middle school and the library. I didn't know if we've had any progress on that, on kind of the research that's been done.
Wendy?
So my plan is to bring a presentation to C&E in our February meeting with some information on that. I have reached out to some various school districts to find out what's happening in other middle schools across the state. And have also been trying to get some research done on best practices in middle school libraries. Interestingly enough, it's very hard to find information on setups of libraries and looking at where they're placing young adult materials.
Is it a separate area?
It's
Is it
been
not a
very
separate?
difficult to find research on that. So, but more to come, and hopefully we'll have a great presentation for C&E in February.
Great, thank you, Jared. Thank you, Wendy.
Can I
Anyone
ask
else?
a
Go ahead,
question
go
on
ahead.
that
Yeah.
topic? And if it's going to be a discussion, I can ask it at another time, but what's the difference between an appropriate middle school level subject matter for books and something called young adults text? What's the difference?
Do you want me to?
If you know the
Yeah.
answer.
Well, it's, so from a parent's point of view or from a librarian point of view, I guess, what is it that you're looking for, Ellen?
Either one. I
So-
guess the parent would be important, but
I have talked to several parents, and when I say I talked to them, they've approached me, of course. But,
Age appropriate.
yeah, age-appropriate material, so.
inter what?
Age-appropriate material. So think of it like a motion picture. You have PG, PG-13, rated R. And at the middle school, we range from 10 years old to 14 years old, maybe? I can't remember. But there's a big age there, and there's big age-appropriate growth. And so do you want to have the PG-13 movies shown to the 10-year-olds and again, I'm just using this in terms that we might all understand together.
But as an
that-
example.
But that's an example, what's really coming to is, you have some that are age appropriate, that can look at the material if they want to, versus some students probably shouldn't be looking at that because they don't have the contextual knowledge to understand and fully digest it from a parent's point of view. And so what parents are asking for is, can we take that material and put it in its own separate section that can be monitored so that people aren't going into that and looking at the books during their period in the library? Not to check them out, but actually read them while they're in the library during study periods. That's what some parents have talked to me about.
I guess my question is, why do we even want that type of material in our school? Period.
Well, my opinion, if I may,
Go ahead.
I think that one of the things that we have to do as shepherds of students and shepherd of our next generation is to give them critical thinking. And we have to instill on that their critical thinking and giving them opportunities to learn. So again, it's all about age appropriateness. You know, my wife, she calls them Harlequin novels sometimes, what she was reading. You know, the old ones that they had. I can't remember the author, but, you know, every time we're up at camp, she's reading them.
Yeah.
You know, there's an age appropriateness for that. And there's a point where you have to teach, my opinion, we have to teach our children what we think is right and wrong and instill in them their morality. But again, they have to be able to learn. And we have to give them the tools to learn. And if that's something that they want to learn about and want to read about because it is some type of fantasy, and I say fantasy as in nonfiction, again, I think it's all about age appropriateness. That's my opinion. I'm sure other people have their own opinions that they'd like to maybe share as well.
I have a problem with any subject matter that would need to be separated from other kids in the same school.
I would say, hold tight before you jump to too many judgments on this,
Okay.
because typically we're looking at, I think the typical number is around age 12. So you've got some kids that are 10-year-olds, and you've got other kids that are 14 and 15-year-olds. So 12's right smack dab in the middle. Right now, what we do is parents have to give permission for their kids to be able to access those books. So it's all
Seventh and
parent,
eighth
right,
Right.
for the younger kids.
Yeah.
But
Mr.
this
Bulgy, and that's
is,
for our 5th and 6th grade students.
Right.
right, 5th and 6th grade
Right.
students. So this is the very topic that Wendy is working on now.
Yeah.
So I would just say, hold tight, more to come. But we want kids reading.
Oh,
We
reading's
want
fine.
kids
I'm
reading.
concerned about
Kids need to read more, not less.
things that some parents might think is appropriate. This
Well,
parent probably would not.
And
for
with
that
all due respect
grade
to
level.
parents, you know, and I would say when my kids were those ages, I knew what my kids were reading. I knew the books that they were reading. I read them with my kids. I talked to them about them. And yes, all kids are at different developmental levels, but our kids are exposed to an awful lot of material and content right now. So kids have cell phones. Sometimes they're monitored, sometimes they're not. They're on a number of social media platforms. So I think that these books are probably a small piece of what kids are exposed to, but let's reserve judgment until
We get more
the work,
information.
comes forward in February.
I know I'd like to see a list of what possible titles would be, to look them up.
Sure.
And
So just hold tight till we get back together
Well,
on
Nicole
this.
had her hand up.
I'm sure we'll
so-
have a robust discussion at a later date,
Yes.
but Lil had her hand up, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up, Lil.
I'm good.
You're good?
All right.
Okay.
We will
Yes,
will
when
put
we
in my
get
2
the-
cents when the presentation is presented.
Yep, we get more
Thank you.
information. Thank you, Jared. All right, is there anything else? All right, we do have non-public tonight.
I'm sorry, my hand didn't go.
Oh.
We're doing pictures tonight?
We're not, because we're
Okay,
down
we're
2
not
board
doing
members,
pictures,
so
okay.
we're gonna do
I can do a
pictures.
sketch real quick.
January
Somebody wants to be
8th.
Dan.
Yeah, we're trying to,
Push my
hopefully
hand.
everybody will be here January 8th, and we'll do
I mean, they both
pictures
got no
then.
hair. I mean,
Right.
It'd be easy.
All right, so I'll need a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A-32C by Ellen. Do I have a second? Second. By Caroline. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes, all right, we're in non-public. We'll
we're
go.
going down below,
Yeah,
right?
we're
down
gonna
below,
move
yeah.
down to the main office.